My name is Emma Carver. I am 30 years old and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And last week, my entire world collapsed during a single phone call. It wasn't a tragedy or an accident. It was my sister, Haley. She didn't call to catch up. She called to demand $150,000 from my life savings. She didn't ask me for a favor. She demanded it, as if the money I worked 10 years to save already belonged to her. When I refused, I thought my parents would understand. I thought they would protect me. Instead, my phone buzzed 2 hours later with a text from my father. It was cold, short, and brutal. Sign off on her mortgage or don't come back. I read those words 3 times. He wasn't choosing fairness. He was choosing control. In that moment, I realized my role in this family wasn't daughter. It was safety net. I didn't scream. I didn't fight back. I walked into my bedroom and packed a single bag. I bought a one-way ticket out of Nashville. Then, I sat down at my computer and locked down every financial account my sister had ever touched. I thought I was leaving just to save my money. But what I uncovered next changed everything I believed about the people I loved the most. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Emma Carver. I am 30 years old, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. You might wonder how a 30-year-old woman allows her family to control her finances. You might ask, why didn't she stop it sooner? It is a fair question, but you have to understand that abuse in a family like mine doesn't start with a shout. It doesn't start with a slap. It starts with a whisper. It starts with a pattern so subtle that you don't even see it forming until you are trapped inside it. In the Carver family, the roles were assigned before I even learned to read. My role was the giver, my sister Haley's role was the taker, and my parents' role was the enablers. I remember the day I realized I didn't matter as much as she did. I was 8 years old. It was a Saturday morning, and the house smelled like pancakes. My mom was at the stove, flipping them onto a blue plate. I was setting the table, placing the forks and knives perfectly straight, just the way Dad liked them. I was proud of how helpful I was being. Haley, who was 6, came running into the kitchen. She was holding my favorite doll, a raggedy thing with yarn hair that I slept with every single night. "I'm giving her a haircut," Haley announced. In her hand, she held a pair of safety scissors. Before I could even scream, she snipped the yarn hair right off the doll's head. I lunged forward. "No, that's mine." I grabbed the doll back. Haley stumbled. She didn't fall hard, and she didn't get hurt, but she sat down on the linoleum floor and let out a wail that shook the windows. It was a piercing, dramatic scream that sounded like she was being murdered. My father rushed in from the living room. "What is going on in here?" "Emma pushed me," Haley sobbed, pointing a chubby finger at me. "She hit me." I stood there, clutching my ruined doll, tears stinging my eyes. "I didn't. She cut my doll's hair, she ruined it." My father didn't look at the doll, he didn't look at the scissors on the floor, he looked at Haley's tears, then he looked at me with a cold, disappointed glare. "Emma," he said, his voice deep and stern. "You are the older sister, you are supposed to know better, why are you so aggressive?" "But she cut." "I don't care about a toy," he snapped. "I care that you hurt your sister, apologize now." I looked at my mom. I waited for her to defend me, she knew how much I loved that doll. But she just sighed, flipped another pancake and said, "Just say sorry, Emma, let's have a nice breakfast. Don't make a scene." Don't make a scene. That was the lesson. My pain was a scene. Haley's pain was a tragedy. I apologized. I swallowed the lump in my throat, looked at my smirking sister and said, "I'm sorry." That moment set the template for the next 20 years. I learned that to be loved, I had to be invisible. I had to be easy. I had to absorb the unfairness without complaining. If I complained, I was difficult. If I accepted it, I was good. As we grew up, the stakes got higher. It wasn't just dolls anymore. It was opportunities. When I was 16, I got a job bagging groceries at the local supermarket. I worked 3 afternoons a week and every Saturday. I saved every penny in a shoebox under my bed. I wanted a car. I had my eye on a beat-up Honda Civic that a neighbor was selling for $2,000. I worked for 8 months. I missed football games. I missed going to the movies with my friends. I worked until my feet ached and my hands smelled like onions. Finally, I had the money. I brought the cash downstairs to the kitchen table. "Dad," I said proudly, "I have enough. Mr. Henderson said he'd sell me the Honda tomorrow." My dad looked at the stack of small bills. He didn't smile. He looked uncomfortable. He exchanged a glance with my mother. "Emma, honey," Mom started, her voice soft and sweet. the voice she used when she was about to take something away from me. "That's amazing, you worked so hard." "But," Dad interrupted. "We've been talking. Haley needs braces." I froze. "Okay, but this is my car money." "Braces are expensive, Em," Dad said, drumming his fingers on the table. "Insurance only covers part of it. We're a little tight right now. The roof needed repairs last month. We were thinking, since you're so good at saving, maybe we could borrow this, just for a few months. We'll pay you back before you head to college." "But Mr. Henderson is selling the car now," I said. My voice was small. I felt that familiar shrinking sensation. "There will be other cars," Dad said dismissively. "Haley's teeth are a health issue. You don't want your sister to be in pain, do you? You're not that selfish, are you?" Selfish. The weapon they always used. I gave them the money. I had to. If I said no, I was the villain who wanted my sister to suffer. They got Haley the braces. They never paid me back. Mr. Henderson sold the car to someone else. I took the bus for 2 more years. By the time I reached adulthood, this dynamic was cemented. I was the responsible one. This wasn't a compliment. It was a job description. It meant I was the safety net. I went to a state university because it was cheaper. Haley went to a private art college because her spirit was too sensitive for a big campus. I worked 2 jobs in college, one in the library, one waiting tables. Haley didn't work at all because she needed to focus on her portfolio. I graduated with honors and 0 debt. She dropped out after 3 semesters with $40,000 in student loans that my parents had co-signed. When I moved to Nashville and got my job in logistics, I thought I was finally free. I thought physical distance would break the cycle. I was wrong. The phone lines were just as effective as being in the same room. My mother called me 3 times a week. The conversations were never about me. She never asked, "How is your job, Emma?" or "Are you dating anyone?" The conversations were always about Haley. "Haley is so depressed," Mom would say. "She can't find a job that respects her creativity." Haley's car broke down again. Poor thing, she was crying on the side of the highway. Haley's landlord is being so mean to her just because she was a few days late on rent. It was a constant drip feed of guilt. And usually, it ended with a request. "Could you send her $50 for groceries, just until Friday? Could you Venmo her enough for an Uber? We don't want her walking home in the dark." And I did it. I sent the $50. I sent the $100. I told myself it was fine. I was making good money. I was a manager now. I had a $401,000. I could afford to help my little sister. But it wasn't help, it was ransom. I was paying them to leave me alone. I was paying them to keep the peace. I was buying their approval, $20 at a time. I remember one specific Thanksgiving, 2 years ago. I had flown home, paying for my own ticket, of course. I had brought expensive wine and gifts for everyone. We were sitting at the dinner table. Haley was talking about her new business idea, selling hand-painted tote bags on Etsy. She needed startup capital. She was looking at Dad. "I just need like $2,000 for supplies," she said, chewing with her mouth open. "I'll make it back in a month." Dad looked at me. "Emma, you just got that bonus, right?" I stopped eating. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth. "Dad, that bonus went into my IRA, it's locked up." "You can pull it out," Haley said. "There's just a small penalty, it's worth it. This business is going to be huge." "I'm not pulling money out of my retirement for tote bags, Haley," I said. It was one of the few times I pushed back. The silence at the table was deafening. My mother looked down at her plate. My father's face turned red. "You think you're better than us," Dad muttered. "What?" I asked. "You think because you have a corporate job and a suit that you're better than your sister," he said, his voice rising. "You sit there and judge her dreams. It's ugly, Emma, it's really ugly." I didn't argue. I just finished my meal in silence. Later that night, before I drove back to the airport, I left a check for $500 on the counter. I told myself I was being generous. But I wasn't. I was being a coward. I was afraid that if I didn't pay, they would finally admit the truth. They didn't love me for who I was. They loved me for what I provided. I spent my 20s building a fortress of financial security. I maxed out my savings. I invested. I lived below my means. I drove a 10-year-old car. I clipped coupons. I did all of this because I knew, deep down, that no one was coming to save me. If I fell, I would hit the ground. If Haley fell, she would land on a mattress made of my money. I didn't realize that by building that fortress, I was just creating a bigger treasure chest for them to raid. They were watching my success not with pride, but with hunger. They were waiting for the right moment to ask for the big score. And when that moment came, they didn't ask. They demanded. The Tuesday it happened started like any other day. I woke up at 6 a.m., went for a run, drank my black coffee, and went to work. I spent 10 hours looking at spreadsheets and managing shipping routes. It was boring work to some people, but I loved it. I loved the logic of it. Input A leads to output B. If you follow the rules, the system works. My family was the opposite. In my family, input A led to chaos B. I got home around 7 p.m. It was raining, a cold, miserable Nashville rain. I was tired. I heated up some leftover soup and stood in my kitchen, listening to the rain hit the window. I felt a rare moment of peace. My apartment was small, but it was mine. I paid the rent. I bought the spoon I was holding. I owned the silence. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up with a photo of Haley sticking her tongue out. It was an old photo from when we were teenagers, back when I still thought we were on the same team. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the red decline button. I knew I should let it go to voicemail. But the conditioning was too strong. What if it's an emergency? What if she's hurt? I slid the green button. Hello, Emma. Oh my God, you need to sit down. Her voice wasn't crying. It was screaming with joy. It was frantic, high-pitched, and fast. I'm standing up, Haley. What's going on? I found it, she breathed. I actually found it, the one. Found what, a boyfriend? No, the house in Oak Park, you know, the one near the cute bakery. The craftsman bungalow with the yellow door. My stomach tightened. Haley had been obsessing over buying a house for 6 months. It was a delusion. She had no steady income, a credit score in the 500s, and zero savings. Haley, I said, keeping my voice calm. We talked about this. You're not in a position to buy a house right now. The market is crazy. Stop, she interrupted. Stop being such a downer for 1 second. Just listen, it's perfect. It has a sunroom for my painting studio. It has a massive backyard for a dog. I'm going to get a golden retriever, by the way. It's walking distance to coffee shops. It is literally the life I am supposed to have. Okay, I said. It sounds nice, but houses cost money. How much is it? It's listed for $450,000, she said quickly, as if saying it fast made the number smaller. But the sellers are desperate. Dad thinks we can get it for $425,000 if we move fast. Dad thinks? I asked. So you've talked to Dad? We've been on the phone all day, she said. He's so excited, Emma. He really wants this for me. He says it will finally give me the stability I need to launch my art career. I felt a flash of irritation. Dad couldn't afford a $425,000 house either. He was retired. His pension was decent, but not buy a second home decent. So how are you paying for it, Haley? I asked. Do you have a pre-approval letter from a bank? Well, that's where it gets a little tricky, she said. Her voice shifted. It went from excited to smooth. It was the voice of a salesperson. The banks are being stupid about my income history. They don't understand freelance work. They want to see W-2s, which is so outdated. It's not outdated, Haley. It's proof you can pay the loan back. Whatever, she snapped. Dad is going to co-sign, so the loan is covered. But to get the monthly payment down to something I can actually afford with my Etsy sales, we need a bigger down payment. We need to put down like 35%. I did the math in my head. 35% of $425,000. That was roughly $148,000. That's a lot of cash, Haley, I said. Where is Dad getting $150,000? He's not, she said. There was a pause. The rain tapped against the glass. He's not, she repeated. You are, I laughed. It was an involuntary, short bark of a laugh. Excuse me. Don't laugh, she said sharply. This is serious. Dad and I looked at the numbers. We know you have the money sitting in that high-yield savings account. Dad said you showed him the balance at Christmas. You have almost $160,000 in there. My blood ran cold. I had shown my father my account balance in a moment of weakness. I had wanted him to be proud of me. I had wanted him to say, "Wow, Emma, you've done so well." Instead, he had memorized the number. He had reported it to Haley. He had cataloged my life's work as a family asset. Haley, I said, my voice trembling with rage. That is my money. That is my life savings. I have been saving that for 10 years. I know, she said, and that's why it's perfect. You don't need it right now. You're happy in your little apartment. You're not married. You don't have kids. The money is just sitting there doing nothing. It's not doing nothing, I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. It's my security, it's my retirement, it's for my house one day. But I need a house now, she screamed. The salesperson mask dropped. The toddler was back. Why are you being so greedy? You have a huge salary. You can save it up again in a few years. I have nothing, Emma, I have nothing. You have nothing because you spend everything, I shouted back. It felt good to yell. You lease luxury cars, you buy designer clothes. You go on vacations you can't afford. I ate rice and beans for 5 years to save that money. You're judging me, she wailed. Dad said you would do this. He said you would act superior. I'm not acting superior. I'm acting like an adult. The answer is no. You can't say no, she said. Her voice dropped to a low, menacing tone. Dad already told the realtor we have the funds. He sent over a proof of funds letter based on your account statement. I froze. He did what? He sent them a copy of your bank statement, she said. So the offer is already in. If you don't transfer the money, the deal falls through. And if the deal falls through, I will be devastated. And Dad will be humiliated. That is fraud, Haley, I whispered. He used my bank statement without my permission. He's your father, she shrieked. He doesn't need permission. We are a family. What is wrong with you? Why do you hate me? I don't hate you, I said, tears streaming down my face now. But I am not giving you $150,000. I am not buying you a house. It's not a gift, she lied. It's an investment. When I sell the house in 10 years, I'll give it back. You will never give it back. You still owe me $500 from Thanksgiving. You owe me $200 for the electric bill last month. You have never paid me back for anything in your life. That's petty, she screamed. You're counting pennies while I'm trying to build a life. You are a cold, heartless bitch, Emma. Dad was right about you. What did Dad say about me? I asked quietly. He said you care more about money than people. He said you've lost your soul. The words hit me like a physical blow. My father, the man I had spent my whole life trying to please, thought I had no soul because I wouldn't let them rob me. If that's what he thinks, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, then he can buy you the house. He can't, she sobbed. He doesn't have the cash, only you do. You are the only one who can fix this. No, I said, I won't fix it. Not this time. If you hang up, she threatened, I will never forgive you. Dad will never forgive you. I know, I said, and I did know. I knew that by saying no, I was lighting a match and dropping it on the bridge. I knew that everything was about to burn. Goodbye, Haley. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I stared at the wall of my kitchen. I felt sick. I felt terrified. But under the fear, there was something else. A tiny, flickering spark of pride. I had said no. For the first time in my life, I had protected Emma. But the war wasn't over. It had just begun. I checked the time. It was 7:30 p.m. I knew my father's patterns. He would call first. If I didn't answer, he would text. And if I didn't do what he wanted, he would go for the throat. I poured myself a glass of water. I sat on my couch. And I waited for the ultimatum. I sat on my beige sofa, my knees pulled up to my chest. The apartment was perfectly silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the rain tapping against the sliding glass door. It was a silence that felt heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. I knew he was going to call. My father was a man of immediate action. He didn't let disobedience simmer. He crushed it while it was fresh. At 7:42 p.m., the phone vibrated on the coffee table. Incoming call, Dad. The screen lit up the dark living room. I stared at it. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, bird-like rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. I had a sudden, vivid memory of being 10 years old. I had forgotten to take the trash out. Dad had come home, seen the full bin, and marched into my room. He didn't yell. He just stood there, filling the doorway, blocking the light. We have standards in this house, Emma, he had said. When you fail those standards, you fail this family. He made me carry the trash out in the rain, barefoot. I didn't answer the phone. I couldn't. I knew that if I heard his voice, that deep, booming baritone that could switch from charming to terrifying in a second, I would crumble. I would apologize. I would promise to fix it. I would transfer the money just to make the scary voice stop. So I let it ring. It rang 4 times. Then it went to voicemail. 10 seconds later, it rang again. Incoming call, Dad. I watched the screen blur through my tears. I hugged my knees tighter. I can't, I whispered to the empty room. I can't do it anymore. The ringing stopped. Then, the vibration of a text message. 2 short buzzes. I reached out with a trembling hand and picked up the phone. The light stung my eyes. Dad, sign off on the transfer for her mortgage or don't come back. We don't have room in this family for selfishness. I read the words. Then I read them again. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. Or don't come back. He wasn't asking me to reconsider. He wasn't asking to talk. He was issuing a decree. It was a binary choice. Option A, give Haley $150,000 of my hard-earned money and be allowed to remain in the family. Option B, keep my money and be exiled. It was a transaction. My membership in the Carver family had a subscription fee, and the price had just gone up to $150,000. I stood up. The blanket I had wrapped around myself fell to the floor. I walked to the window and looked out at the streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement. For years, I had told myself that my father was tough but fair. I told myself he pushed me because he saw potential in me. I told myself he was harder on me than Haley because he respected me more. It was a lie. I saw that now with a clarity that was sharp and cold. He didn't respect me, he used me. To him, I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. I was a battery. When the battery is full, you use it. When the battery refuses to work, you throw it away. Selfishness. He used that word to shame me. But looking at my reflection in the dark glass of the window, I didn't feel selfish. I felt exhausted. I was 30 years old and I was still afraid of getting in trouble with my daddy. No, I said aloud. The words sounded strange in the quiet apartment. No. I turned away from the window. I walked into my bedroom. I didn't turn on the light. I pulled my suitcase out from the back of the closet. It was a large, hardshell gray suitcase I used for business trips. I unzipped it on the bed. I started packing. I didn't pack like I was going on a trip. I packed like I was escaping a fire. I threw in my jeans, my sweaters, my underwear. I went to the bathroom and swept my toiletries into a bag. Toothbrush, face cream, hairbrush. I went to my dresser. I looked at the jewelry box. Inside was a gold necklace my parents had given me for my college graduation. It was thin, delicate, with a small diamond. I picked it up. I remembered the day they gave it to me. "We're so proud," Mom had said. But then, 10 minutes later, they had asked if I could drive Haley to a party because she was too tired to drive herself. Even on my graduation day, I was the chauffeur. I dropped the necklace back into the box. I didn't want it. It felt like a collar. I went back to the living room. I looked at the photos on my mantle. Me and Mom at brunch. Me and Dad at a baseball game. Me and Haley at the beach. In the beach photo, Haley was beaming, front and center, wearing a new bikini. I was in the background, holding the cooler and the towels. I was literally carrying their baggage. I took the photo out of the frame. I looked at my own face in the background. I looked tired. I looked eager to please. I tore the photo in half, then I tore it again. I dropped the pieces into the trash can. I went to my desk. I needed my laptop. I needed my passport. I needed my birth certificate. I found my folder of important documents. I flipped through it. Social security card. Check. Passport. Check. Lease agreement. Check. I paused my lease. I had 6 months left on my lease. If I left now, I would lose my deposit. I would probably have to pay a penalty. I didn't care. I would pay $10,000 if it meant getting away from that text message. Don't come back. Okay, Dad, I whispered, zipping up the suitcase. I won't. But before I walked out that door, I had to be sure. I had to know exactly how deep the rot went. Haley had mentioned that Dad sent a proof of funds letter. That meant he had access to my information. If he had access to that, what else did they have? I sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. My hands were shaking, but my mind was laser-focused. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was an auditor, and I was about to audit my own life. I logged into my primary bank account first. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Username, eCarver1995 password. I was holding my breath as the page loaded. The balance was there. $158,400. It was safe. They hadn't touched it yet. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. But I knew I couldn't relax. Haley said Dad had sent a proof of funds letter. That meant he had a statement. How did he get a statement? I clicked on Profile and Settings. I clicked on Paperless Settings. It was set to digital only. I clicked on Email Address for statements. My heart stopped. There were 2 emails listed. Emma.Carver@gmail.com primary, dadcarversr@yahoo.com, secondary CC for all statements. I stared at the screen. He had added himself. When I checked the log. Added. 4 years ago. 4 years. For 4 years, every time I got a monthly statement, he got one too. He had been watching my savings grow. He knew every deposit. He knew every bonus. He had been tracking my net worth like a hawk watching a field mouse. He hadn't added himself to help me. He added himself to monitor the inventory. I deleted his email immediately. Then I changed my password. I made it something complicated, a string of random numbers and symbols that had nothing to do with my childhood dog or my birthday. But I wasn't done. If he was watching my savings, what was Haley doing? I opened a new tab. Annualcreditreport.com. I needed to see everything. I answered the security questions. Which of these addresses have you lived at? What is the monthly payment on your car loan? The report generated. It was a long PDF. I started scrolling. Mortgage inquiries, 0 car loans, paid in full credit cards. I scanned the list. Chase Sapphire Preferred. Open 2021. Status, current, CD double cash. Open 2019. Status, current. American Express Gold. Open 2020. Status, delinquent. I froze. American Express Gold. I didn't have an American Express Gold card. I had never applied for one. I thought the annual fee was too high. I clicked on the details. Authorized user, Haley Carver. Current balance, $7,422. Status, 60 days past due. The room started to spin. She had opened a card in my name. Or more likely, she had intercepted a pre-approved offer at my parents' house, where I still got some junk mail, and filled it out. She added herself as an authorized user, and she had been using it for 3 years. I looked at the balance history. $200 at Sephora, $400 at a boutique hotel in Charleston, $150 at a sushi restaurant, $1,200 for Apple Store. She had been living a life of luxury on my credit, and she had been making the minimum payments. Until 2 months ago, she stopped paying. That's why the status was delinquent. That's why my credit score, which used to be 800, was now sitting at 740. She was sinking my ship to keep herself afloat. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my head between my knees. This wasn't just borrowing. This was identity theft. This was a felony. My sister, the one I had protected on the playground, the one I had bought ice cream for, was a criminal. And I was the victim. I forced myself to sit up. Keep digging, a voice in my head said, find it all. I remembered the old savings account at the credit union. It was a small local bank in my hometown. My parents had helped me open it when I was 16 to save my waitressing tips. I hadn't used it in years, but I kept it open because it had no fees. I usually kept about $500 in it as a rainy day fund. I navigated to the credit union's website. I had to reset the password because I hadn't logged in for so long. Finally, the dashboard loaded. Current balance, $12.45. I clicked on Transactions. August 14. Withdrawal transfer to H. Carver, $200 September 2. Withdrawal transfer to H. Carver, $150 October 10. Withdrawal transfer to H. Carver, $138. She had drained it. Slowly, systematically, like a leech. She knew I didn't check this account. She probably had the login saved on the family computer. Whenever she needed cash for a night out, for clothes, for drinks, she just logged in and took it. She stole my tips. She stole the money I made scrubbing tables when I was a teenager. But the worst discovery was yet to come. I logged into my Vanguard investment account. This was where my Roth IRA lived. This was my retirement. I went to account settings. I went to beneficiaries. I had set this up 5 years ago. I remembered listing my parents. John and Linda Carver, 50% each. I wanted to make sure they were taken care of if something happened to me. I looked at the screen. The names had been changed. Primary beneficiary, Haley Carver, 100%. Date modified, 6 months ago. I stared at the date, 6 months ago. I was visiting home for Dad's birthday. I remembered leaving my laptop open on the kitchen island while I went to pick up the cake with Mom. Haley had stayed behind because she had a headache. She hadn't had a headache. She had waited until I left. She sat down at my computer. She went into my most private financial settings, and she wrote herself into my will. If I died tomorrow, Haley would get everything. My savings, my investments, my life's work. She had literally positioned herself to profit from my death. I pushed my chair back from the desk. I stood up and walked to the bathroom. I leaned over the sink and dry heaved. Nothing came out but bile. I looked at my face in the mirror. I looked pale. My eyes were wide and terrified. But behind the terror, the anger was finally igniting. It started as a spark, but now it was a roaring fire. They didn't just feel entitled to my help. They felt entitled to my existence. They had stripped me for parts. Dad took the information. Haley took the credit. Mom took the silence. They were cannibals. I walked back to the desk. I didn't cry anymore. I felt cold, clinical. I connected my printer. I printed everything. I printed the email settings showing Dad's address. I printed the Amex statements showing Haley's spending. I printed the credit union transfers. I printed the beneficiary change log. The printer whirred and spat out page after page of evidence. It was the physical proof of my family's betrayal. I stacked the papers into a neat pile. I put them in a manila folder. Then I picked up my phone. I didn't call Dad. I didn't call Haley. I looked up a number I had in my contacts. Morgan Tate. She was a financial advisor I had hired a few years ago to help me set up my IRA. She was tough, smart, and expensive. It was 9 p.m. She wouldn't answer. I called her office voicemail. Morgan, I said, my voice shaking but clear. This is Emma Carver. I need an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. As soon as you open, I think. I know my family has been stealing from me. I need to lock everything down. I need to go to war. I hung up. I took the folder and put it in my suitcase. I zipped the bag shut. I put on my coat. I walked to the door of my apartment. I took one last look around. This was the place where I had been a daughter. When I walked out that door, I would be something else. I would be a stranger. I opened the door and walked out into the rain. The next morning, I sat in Morgan Tate's office. It was a glass-walled room overlooking downtown Nashville. It looked sterile and clean, the exact opposite of the mess my life had become. Morgan was a sharp woman in her 50s, the kind of person who didn't sugarcoat bad news. I had hired her 3 years ago to help me set up my retirement funds. I trusted her. She placed a thick file on the desk between us. She didn't open it immediately. She folded her hands and looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional anger. Emma, she said, her voice low, I need you to prepare yourself. What I found isn't just sloppy money management by your family. It is systemic fraud. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. Tell me everything. She opened the file. We found the Amex card you discovered. That was just the tip of the iceberg. I ran a cross-reference on your social security number against recent loan inquiries. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a list. A long list. 3 months ago, Morgan said, pointing to the top line, an application was submitted for a $40,000 personal loan through a peer-to-peer lending site. It was submitted in your name, using your old home address, your parents' house. Did it go through? I asked, my voice trembling. No, it was denied because of a mismatch in employment history. They listed your employer as self-employed artist. That's Haley's job title, isn't it? I closed my eyes. Haley had tried to take out a $40,000 loan in my name to fund her lifestyle, claiming she was me. There is more, Morgan continued. I found 2 attempts to refinance your student loans. You paid yours off years ago, but there was an attempt to open a new education line of credit. And here is the big one. She pulled out a printed email exchange. This is from a mortgage broker in Oak Park. It seems your father has been in communication with them regarding the house Haley wants to buy. In the pre-approval paperwork, they listed a co-borrower with assets totaling exactly the amount in your savings account. I stared at the paper. My father hadn't just demanded I sign the mortgage. He had already started the paperwork assuming I would. He had given them my financial profile. He had promised them my money before he even asked me. They were going to trap me, I whispered. They were going to put my name on the deed without me really understanding the risk. It's worse, Emma, Morgan said. If you had signed that mortgage and Haley defaulted, which, given her credit history, is a statistical certainty, the bank wouldn't just take the house. They would come for your assets, your savings, your future wages. Your father set it up so that you carried 100% of the risk, while Haley got 100% of the benefit. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just favoritism. This was financial predation. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me from the world, was serving me up as a meal for my sister. What do? I asked. Morgan leaned forward. We go nuclear, we freeze everything. I've already drafted letters to the credit bureaus. We dispute the Amex as identity theft. We file a police report regarding the stolen savings from the credit union. A police report? I hesitated. That would mean arresting Haley. Morgan looked me dead in the eye. Emma, she stole money from a federally insured bank account. That is a crime. If you don't file the report, the bank assumes you authorized it. You won't get the money back. And more importantly, she will do it again. She will keep doing it until you have nothing left. I looked at the file. I looked at the evidence of years of betrayal. I thought about the text my father sent me. Don't come back. They had already decided I wasn't family. I was just a resource. Do it, I said. File the report, freeze it all. Walking out of Morgan's office, my phone began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It buzzed in my hand like an angry insect. 15 missed calls. Mom 8 missed calls. Dad 22 text messages. Haley, I sat in my car in the parking garage, the engine off, and just watched the notifications roll in. I didn't unlock the phone. I just read the previews on the lock screen. Mom, Emma, the bank just called Haley. Her card was declined. They said it's been flagged for fraud. What did you do? Dad, pick up the phone, Emma. Now you are acting like a child. Haley, you reported me. Are you insane? It was just a credit card. I was paying it. You are ruining my life. Mom, please, honey. Dad is furious. Just call the bank and tell them it was a mistake. We can fix this. Don't tear this family apart over money. That last message broke something inside me. Don't tear this family apart. In their eyes, I was the one tearing the family apart. Not Haley, who stole my identity. Not Dad, who tried to extort my life savings. Me, because I finally stood up. I realized then that the peace we had in the Carver family was actually just my silence. The only reason we looked like a happy family was because I absorbed all the dysfunction. I was the sponge that soaked up the mess so they could stay dry. I started the car. I didn't drive to my apartment. I drove to the park where I used to go when things got too loud at home. I sat on a bench and looked at the ducks floating on the pond. They looked so calm. I thought about my life. I was 30 years old. I had a good career. I had friends who respected me. I paid my taxes. I was a good person. Why did I feel like a criminal? Because they trained me to feel that way. I remembered a Christmas when I was 12. Haley had broken an ornament, a fragile antique glass ball that belonged to my grandmother. She started crying immediately. When my mom ran into the room, Haley pointed at me. Emma pushed me. I hadn't touched her. I was on the other side of the room. But my mom turned to me, her face tight with disappointment. Emma, you know better. You have to be more careful with your sister. I had tried to defend myself. I didn't do it. Don't lie, my dad had boomed from the doorway. Apologize to your sister. I apologized. I took the blame to stop the yelling. I took the blame to make the house quiet again. I had been apologizing for 18 years. I looked at my phone again, a new text from Haley. Haley, I hope you die alone, you selfish bitch. I stared at the words. Selfish. There it was again. But this time, it didn't hurt. It clarified things. If protecting my future was selfish, then I wanted to be selfish. If refusing to be robbed was selfish, then I would wear that label with pride. My refusal didn't just disrupt their plan for the house. It destabilized the entire family hierarchy. I was the bottom tier. I was the foundation. When the foundation moves, the house falls. I wasn't going to fix it this time. I wasn't going to glue the ornament back together. I blocked Haley's number, then I blocked Dad's. I hesitated on Mom's. She was a victim of him too, in her own way. But she was also his accomplice. She watched him bully me for decades and said nothing. She prioritized peace over my protection. I blocked Mom. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was the first breath of fresh air I had taken in my entire life. I went back to my apartment with a mission. I wasn't just leaving the family, I was leaving the blast radius. I knew them. They wouldn't stop at texts. Dad would show up at my door. Haley would come to my workplace and cause a scene. They would try to shame me into submission. I needed physical distance. I opened my laptop and looked at a map. I had always loved Toronto. I had visited once for a conference and loved the clean streets, the lake, the feeling of being in a different world. It was far enough to be inaccessible, but close enough to fly back if I ever absolutely needed to. I checked flights. There was one leaving at 6 a.m. the next morning. I booked it. One way. Then I called my landlord. I told him I had a family emergency, which wasn't a lie, and I had to leave immediately. I told him to keep the security deposit and that I would pay the lease break fee. I didn't care about the cost. Freedom has a price tag and I was willing to pay it. I spent the night packing. It was a strange, surreal process. How do you fit 30 years of life into 2 suitcases? I took my clothes, my laptop, my important documents. I took the photo of me and my best friend, Sarah. I looked at the family photos on my dresser, a picture of us at Disney World, a picture of my graduation. Everyone was smiling. I left them. I left them face down on the dresser. I called a junk removal service to come the next day and take everything else. The couch, the bed, the dishes, I didn't want any of it. It all felt tainted, covered in the invisible dust of my old life. At 4 a.m., the Uber arrived. The driver was a quiet man who didn't ask why I was crying as I locked the front door of my apartment for the last time. As we drove through the dark streets of Nashville, passing the places I knew, the coffee shop where I studied, the office where I worked, the park where I realized I had to leave, I felt a panic rising in my chest. "What are you doing?" A voice in my head screamed. "You're running away, this is crazy," but then another voice answered. A calmer, stronger voice. "You're not running away, you're evicting them from your life." I got to the airport. I checked my bags. I went through security. Every step felt like shedding a layer of skin. When I sat at the gate, waiting for boarding, I opened my email one last time. There was an email from my boss. I had sent my resignation letter at midnight. He had replied already. "Emma, I'm shocked, but I understand you have personal matters to attend to. You've been an incredible asset. If you need a reference, you have it." I closed the laptop. I had no job. I had no apartment. I had no family, but I had my savings. I had my dignity. And for the first time, I had total control over what happened next. The flight attendant announced boarding. I stood up, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked down the jet bridge. I didn't look back. Toronto was cold, but it was a clean cold. The kind that wakes you up. I rented a furnished apartment in a quiet neighborhood near High Park. I spent the first week just sleeping. It was like my body was recovering from a long illness. I didn't turn my main phone number back on. I got a new Canadian number. I only gave it to Morgan Tate and my best friend Sarah. Sarah became my window into the life I left behind. She still lived in Nashville, and she heard the rumors. 2 weeks after I left, Sarah called me. "Emma," she said, "it's bad, you need to know what's happening." "Tell me," I said, looking out my window at the snow falling on the maple trees. "Haley didn't get the house," Sarah said. "Obviously. But it's worse than that. The police investigation regarding the theft from your account triggered a wider audit of her finances. It turns out she had falsified income documents for her car lease too. They repossessed her car yesterday. I felt a twinge of guilt, a phantom pain from my old life. "Is she okay?" "She's living back in your parents' house," Sarah said, "and she is furious. She's telling everyone who will listen that you stole her money. She's spinning this wild story that you promised to buy the house for her and then backed out to spite her." "Let her talk," I said. "The truth is in the bank records." "And your dad," Sarah hesitated. "What about him?" "He tried to go to your old office. He demanded to speak to your boss. He wanted to know where your paycheck was being forwarded. Security had to escort him out. It was humiliating, Emma. People are talking. They're realizing that the respectable Mr. Carver is actually unhinged." I closed my eyes. I could see it. My father, red-faced and blustering, trying to demand information he had no right to. He was losing control, and without control, he was collapsing. "And Mom?" I asked quietly. "She's invisible," Sarah said. "I saw her at the grocery store. She looks 10 years older. She just kept her head down. I think she knows. Without you there to be the buffer, she's stuck in the house with Haley's rage and your dad's bitterness. There's no one left to blame but themselves." I hung up the phone. The news didn't make me happy. I didn't feel a rush of victory. I just felt a deep, profound sadness. It was a tragedy. They had destroyed themselves because they refused to treat me with basic respect. Months passed. I got a job at a logistics firm in downtown Toronto. I made new friends who didn't know my last name or my history. I started dating a nice man named David who was a teacher. One afternoon, a letter arrived at my new address. It had been forwarded by Morgan. It was from my father. It was handwritten. I recognized the sharp, jagged scrawl. "Emma, this has gone on long enough. You've made your point. Haley is pregnant. She needs help. We are willing to forgive your behavior if you come home and help us sort this out. We are a family. You have a duty. We are willing to forgive your behavior." I laughed. A loud, genuine laugh that echoed in my empty kitchen. Even now, with his reputation in tatters and his favorite daughter failing, he couldn't ask. He could only command. He couldn't apologize. He could only offer forgiveness for a crime I didn't commit. I didn't burn the letter. I didn't tear it up. I simply dropped it in the recycling bin, right on top of a flyer for a pizza place. It was garbage. And I was done holding onto garbage. It has been 1 year since I bought that one-way ticket. My life in Toronto is simple. I don't have a big house. I don't drive a luxury car. I walk to work. I buy fresh bread from the bakery on the corner. On Sundays, David and I go hiking near the lake. I am not rich, but I am wealthy in ways that matter. I have my savings, which are growing again. I have my peace. I have a silence in my head that used to be filled with anxiety. I learned something that I should have known years ago. Family is not defined by blood. It is defined by respect. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. My parents and my sister shared my DNA, but they didn't share my values. They viewed love as a transaction. I gave, they took. That wasn't a relationship, it was a robbery. Sometimes, late at night, I still worry about them. I wonder if Mom is okay. I wonder if Haley will ever grow up. But I stop myself before I spiral. I remind myself of the mantra I learned in therapy. You cannot save people who are determined to drown, especially if they are trying to use you as a life raft. I didn't abandon them, I released myself. Walking away was the hardest thing I ever did. It felt like cutting off my own arm. But as I stand here today, watching the sunset over the Toronto skyline, I realize I didn't lose anything. I lost the weight of their expectations. I lost the fear of their judgment. I lost the burden of their failures. And in that empty space I found myself. I am Emma Carver. I am not a safety net. I am not a bank. I am not a victim. I am free.